Birmingham. Let me invite you to really look at where you are, because this stuff matters. The built environment has consequences. It impacts us all at a human cellular level. Everything in our lives is built environment, where we live, where we work, where we shop, where we spend our leisure time like today, and the way that we move between those places. And yet it's not part of our conversation. It's not something that we normally feel we have a voice to contribute to. The built environment speaks to us at a subconscious level. It tells us that this is what we deserve, not just in this moment, but in life. Without even realizing it, we are all barometers for how the built environment feels. It speaks clearly of the attitudes and the values that created it in the first place. And if we don't stand for something as a city, we'll be told who we are, what we stand for. My work is with built environment skills in schools. I spend my time encouraging young people to come into careers in construction. This is an event we held at the NEC last week. This isn't because I have a particular love of construction, in fact, some days exactly the opposite, but because I care so passionately, so profoundly about the product, about what we build. Birmingham is a young and diverse city, and our industrial heritage and our rapid growth means that we're segregated in terms of our communities, our functions, and our priorities. And construction isn't a career of choice for many young people. And yet the opportunity, the responsibility to be part of something that impacts lives so profoundly is something I really want to encourage. You might have noticed that the city is changing, but society is changing. Citizenship means that we expect to have our voices heard. We expect to be part of the conversation about what is happening for us and about us. I don't know about you, Birmingham, but I think we need to build better stuff. Not just pretty, shiny things, but the things that move us forward individually and collectively. As Churchill once said, we shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. My work in behavioral and environmental psychology tells me that thoughts become feelings and feelings become behaviors. By impacting our thoughts, the built environment indirectly affects our behaviors, our consequences, the choices and the decisions that we make in life. And that psychological and physiological impact of the built environment moves us forward. It helps us to feel and experience, but it also tells us where things are wrong. Those feelings are profound and they're far-reaching. We do some things fantastically well in the built environment. You might have heard of hospitals where the very fabric of the design helps patients to recuperate more quickly. We as a city are starting to move away from some of our more bizarre decisions that led to weird abandoned spaces that became unofficial skateboard parks. And we're looking at more flexible spaces. Eye contact is a significant part of social activity and social integration. Where we choose to assemble determines how we integrate with others, and these flexible spaces mean that people can choose to integrate to the level that they are comfortable. That creates life between buildings, which is such a phenomenally important part of the built environment. You've probably stepped over this in your walks around the city. This is known as concrete corduroy, and it's part of built environment's efforts to become more inclusive and more supportive of everybody in society. This is designed to help people with visual impairments to avoid trip hazards and to identify street furniture. And as Glenn mentioned, there are some pushes towards public transport to supporting cyclists. We're not there yet. This is the bike rack at New Street Station, our biggest train station. So we have a way to go, but it's something that we're understanding and embracing. The built environment also does some really lousy things. It's isolation, it's fuel poverty. And one of the biggest issues facing the NHS at the moment is a massive rise in mental health problems. Construction in the built environment contributes to that through acoustics. If you can hear your neighbour switching on their kettle, watching TV, that's the beginning of low-level mental health problems. That's the beginning of neuroses. Our efforts at inclusion aren't always what they should be either. Many of the buildings in the city centre have these kind of intercom systems on their front entrance. But how would a deaf person know when to push the door? And a recent cycling event said that 250,000 car journeys in the city are made every year of a mile or less. What that means is that earlier this year, Birmingham breached its air quality toxicity levels. The air in the city centre is toxic, and we're all breathing that. There's also a historic legacy to that the city has been built, literally and metaphorically, by people who don't live here. Our captains of industry drove into the city in their polluting cars, worked their magic, and then left again to go to leafy suburbs and clean air. Some of the impact of the built environment is actually subliminal. Believe it or not, there is a thought process towards optimal pavement width, about where we assemble, where we disperse, and how quickly we move through spaces. It can impact us without us even realizing that that's what's being given to us. And as a city, we have some real social problems. A report earlier this week said that the homeless population in the city is the highest it's been for 20 years. But anyone who's walked around the city recently didn't need a report to tell them that. Is this who we are as a city? Is this what we stand for? Whilst it's not construction's job to single-handedly solve that problem, something as complex as homelessness, homes and homeless people do seem like part of the same conversation. So when you go from here today, I really urge you to look at where you are. Is it as good as it could be? Is it as good as it should be? Is it how you would have designed it? And is it what you deserve? Most of the regeneration of the city is taking place within a square mile of where we sit today, and that speaks very clearly about who we prioritise and where we segregate. Construction, you may know, is a hugely male-dominated sector, and the product, the built environment, is naturally a reflection of a world seen through that masculine lens. And outside the confines of our city walls, we have some real global problems. The UN Global Report said that by 2030, the world will need 50% more food and 30% more water than it currently produces. In construction terms, 2030 is a week on Tuesday. If we're not doing those things now, there's no chance that we will hit those targets. With that in mind, should every public building that we have here have green roofs or green walls to grow more food? Given that it's Britain and it rains 300 days a year, should every building have rainwater harvesting? The good stuff is within our grasp. I think we've got to measure by what we embrace, what we create, who we include, and the local skills agenda. Unfortunately, Andy Street couldn't stay for today, but the local skills agenda is such an important part of that. By empowering young people to create the future that they want, gives us the opportunity to create a better city. Obviously, women are missing from that conversation in a sector that's so male-dominated. But also diversity in all its guises needs to be represented, whether that's diversity in values and priorities or cultural and ethnicity. And digital. Digital changes everything. Digital gives us the opportunity to work through the problems, to understand the implications and the consequences before a spade even goes in the ground. Through virtual reality, through gamification, through 3D modeling, we don't need to learn from our mistakes, we can design them out. When we delegate our voice to others, we find we delegate our personality, and then we find we might be missing from the conversation. When you look at these beautiful artists' impressions of spaces, look at what they're not showing you. Who's in the margins? If you don't see yourself reflected in those people, that's not about political correctness, that's about representation. Are you prioritized? It's tough to stand for what we believe in, but this won't happen by accident, and it's too important to leave to chance. The decisions that we make now will affect the next 20, 30, 50 years of the city. I invite you to come and be part of that conversation, add your voice, because success is a team sport and we all have a part to play. When you go from here, look at your built environment. Are the consequences the ones that you would choose? Help me to build the things that build more things. Build literal things, buildings, places, and spaces that build figurative things. Community, inclusion, opportunity, participation. Come and be part of the next chapter of your city. Thank you.